Welcome everybody, welcome to this kerfuffle news flash. The fake taxi with Christian Byfield. Mr. Byfield, how are you?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. As you alluded to, not quite the setting I was planning on. This was meant to be in Shoreditch, in the office, in our lovely content room. But instead, I'm sat in the truck in your spiritual home ground of a pub car park.
I think you're right.
Life of a tech entrepreneur.
It does show how sort of Poundland kerfuffle has become these days, where we allow this kind of level of. I prefer to think how real we are, David. Don't we?
That's it. It's you're giving it to people real. You're stripping away all the shininess and just
Yeah, mainly about our own brand. But enough about that. Anyway, enough of that. We've got so much to talk about actually, and we haven't caught up for a while, which probably helps explain the next bit because you haven't exactly been quiet, have you, Mr. Viking? In the way that the Vikings weren't quiet and they put themselves about a bit, so have you. Do you want to give us? Well, let's deal with the biggest because, of course, we're both massive award whores. You were just, am I right in saying, placed 5th in the overall PropTech placings at the moment, the shortlist?
Yeah, so that's right. So there's a business sort of blog website called BusinessCloud, and they compile a lot of kind of top 50 companies across lots of different sectors. And one of the ones they do annually is PropTech 50. And interesting, that's not just kind of agency PropTech. I know when agents hear that, it's also across the built environment, planning, commercial. So it's a really broad spectrum, which in the UK is about 900 plus businesses that sit within that kind of broad category of PropTech based in the UK. So they did an initial consultation. We found out about a month ago we'd made the shortlist. Now, we were aware of this list before, but it's not something you can enter. You can't put your name in and go, "Oh, hi, we're innovative. Innovative. Can we join the list?" kind of thing. So in that respect, it's quite refreshing that it's not something you can kind of say, "Well, I'm good enough, I should be in the mix." It's entirely down to them. They curate that list. They come up with a short list. So we found out about a month ago we were on the initial shortlist, which was 127 companies. Of those, I think there was about 25 businesses that we knew, pretty much all very well respected, very well established companies. You had all 3 major portals in there, and then the likes of Good Lord and Fixflow, and many of which have made the final list. And then I think we could get some votes in, which was a small part of the score, and then it was mainly decided through a judging panel. So there was editor from BusinessCloud, they had a representative from the British Property Federation, someone from the UK PropTech Association, and then there was someone from Obi Property, which I think is kind of resident experiences for large scale buildings, and then Cambridge Finance, who do a lot of funding within the built environment. So yeah, I mean, we knew, like I said, we knew about a month ago that we were in the short list. Like internally, I'd said to people, "Look, I'm happy if we make 50th. Like if we can make 50th on that list, I'll be very, very happy."
Do you believe in David? Do you believe he'd be happy on that?
I don't know. I sat at his table at the Esters last year, and I saw the look on his face when he didn't get the colour trophy that he wanted. He got many trophies. It was like a kid who got the miniature version for Christmas.
I'm minded as I was listening to him there, David, that it was like when somebody starts talking, your ex starts talking about their new partner. It was very much sort of like, this really professional company dealing with these really blue chips. But guys, I still like you.
So, Chris, in real terms, Christian, to be competing against all of these sort of more established brands that you're talking about, I want to ask you, did you believe that you'd be in this position so quickly? Because you've concluded what, over 51,000 tenancies concluded under your platform so far. I mean, we're talking about considerable bulk in terms of the numbers
I mean,
that you're helping.
we're going at quite a nice volume now. So I think our agents are concluding about 1,000 tenancies every 10 days. So it's about 100 tenancies a day through the platform. And obviously, as we onboard more and more agents, that continues to scale up. So, look, I think the two things we liked about the recognition in that list is that from the companies that I know within kind of our marketplace, those 20-25 companies, as far as I'm aware, we're the only self-funded business that was in that list in our sector. Which ultimately doesn't fundamentally mean anything, but I think personally that's just a bit of pride that we've managed to compete with companies that have a lot more money sat behind them and at their disposal. So that was definitely nice, and that, you know, then to be in the same list as the likes of Zoopla and Rightmove with hundreds of millions of pounds of revenue and a consumer facing brand is again.
Let's talk about them, Christian, because of course, you know, you're fifth, and to go down to the next person in our little world, Resi, PropTech, and everything else, it is that minnow Rightmove at number 15.
I didn't know anyone heard of them. They're a relatively new kind of startup.
A gulf of 10 places, though. What I was going to ask you in giving my Watkins-esque interview was, are you worried that you're going to get an aggressive bid from REA.com, who have obviously recently been jilted? Or are you going to say officially here on the Kerfuffle podcast that you're not interested?
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure I'm worried about getting an aggressive bid from REA. But yeah, look, I think the nice thing with that list is, I think for many people, they'd look at our company and say, well, how the hell is a company like yours fifth and a company as big and as profitable as Rightmove 15th? I think the important thing to remember about that list was it was really focusing on innovation.
Yeah.
And, you know, Rightmove are undoubtedly a huge player in the marketplace, and a very, very successful business. But I think lots of agents would agree with me when the biggest frustration a lot of agents have had with them is actually their lack of innovation, despite having so much financial resource to spend. So I think that's the nice thing. That enables a company like us to be considered in the same list as the likes of Rightmove and Zoopla and Good Lord and Fixflow. So yeah, I think you know, that's exciting, and that's what we always wanted to be. We always wanted to keep moving the needle. We continue to be the only company that does what we do. And it would be really easy to rest on our laurels and be like, well, no one else is coming into our space, we don't really need to do much. But you know, we're working really hard on doing a lot. We've got 2 new inventory partner integrations launching in the next couple of weeks. We've got some new accounting functionality out towards the end of the year. Excitingly, we are about to start building an integration with Repit. Don't know if you've heard of them. I don't know if you guys have come across them. I don't know.
I think they're going places.
Does it ring a bell?
They're
like CFP? Is it like CFP?
Something like that.
They had a problem with the sales director a while back. A while back.
Ago, and it's been plain sailing since then. But no, I mean, look, we're, as an agent myself, I know that agents ultimately want that CRM integration. They want that completely closed ecosystem, and I think some agents have been a bit frustrated with us that we haven't done it sooner. And you know, we've always been quite open about, there's quite a good reason why that is. A, they're very expensive to build, but also in terms of like moving the needle, in terms of what we do, in terms of time saving. I just mentioned we're about to launch 2 new inventory partners, which I think will bring us to 9 integrated inventory solutions. Our inventory partner solution, we reckon, saves on average an hour per tenancy just through that integration. Our CRM integration is probably going to save 5 to 10 minutes. but it completes the picture. It puts a lot of data where an agent wants it in their central management system. So yeah, so we made that tough decision to really focus on things that really move the needle and deliver the difference. But now it's exciting that we get round to building a CRM integration, and we've learned a lot. We have had one in play for 3 years. So a lot of people know Leaders Romans Group has been a client of ours for 3 years. And part of onboarding them was we had to build out an integration with PropCo, the CRM they use. And so we've spent 3 years with LRG understanding what the best in class integration looks like for a product like ours. And there's a lot of touch points. So, some companies can import and it's just a quick data capture and it's something they can build in a few days. We're looking at close to a 6-figure investment to build our Reaper integration. By the time we've done all 3 phases, it would have cost us close to 6 figures. But it's money well spent, and it will kind of tie up the loose ends, shall we say, in the process.
Getting access to over 5,000 offices, some would say, obviously that's that's the advantage. And actually, because of the enterprise nature of their client base as well, although you were kind of almost throwing it away, that kind of 5 to 10 minutes, the kind of businesses that you're dealing with there understand that those 5 and 10 minutes multiplied across the size of their firm has a massive strategic benefit, doesn't it? Once you start to add those all up.
Yeah, you look at LRG, who we work with now. They manage over 70,000 tenancies, and we all know they're very active in the acquisition space. That portfolio is only going in one direction. So yeah, we're dealing with businesses of that sort of scale. Like you said, small differences make a big difference. So no, we're really excited about that, and we've talked to you guys about our ambitions with AI. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get around to that this year as we'd hoped, and we're probably looking at a mid-year release for that.
Just chuck a bit of ChatGPT in and claim it's AI integrated. That's what everyone else is doing.
It'll be fine. Christian, whilst we've got you, you are famous for having an opinion on pretty much everything in the industry, and you're not afraid to voice it online.
That's a bit
rich. Hello, me.
Behind me, you are almost as verbose. No. But you went online yesterday. I think you were talking about the Women in the State Agency Conference, which I think you were very heavy supporters of last year. And you were talking about this one coming up. You would have seen the recent sort of controversies on the makeup of panels. It's remiss of me to say that we couldn't find a female version of Christian today to take his place. But talk to us about.
Sorry. So look, the Women in State Agency Conference, I've been a big fan since it started. When they first launched the concept 2 years ago, we didn't sponsor it the first year, but I think I was the first ticket they sold. I asked if men were allowed to buy tickets first of all, and then bought one.
Did you not get awarded one? Oh, sorry, you bought one. Okay, that's interesting.
I think they wanted to make sure you were in the room to learn, Whaley. I think that's what that was about, my friend. So no, look, as someone who has built 2 businesses with a female business partner, I am very much aware of how incredibly effective having a woman in your business can be, and having a diverse business. And we've had times in our agency when I was the only male employee. Being in London, it is multicultural as well. So again, we try and be as diverse as we can as a business. But we feel that is one of our true strengths. That's always been something that makes our business what it is. And Anne and I are very different characters and personalities, and how we bounce off each other is what makes a business good. But that said, you still just having a female business partner doesn't mean I know everything, and doesn't mean I get it all right, and it doesn't mean I empathize and understand with things. And I think you know, I really loved the idea behind the first Women in State Agency conference, and, you know, went along to it. And as you guys well know, I absolutely loved it. It kind of, what I liked about it was, it wasn't just about the whole women in agency message. I felt like it actually kind of really made us think about what an agency conference is. Because that conference could have actually been for almost any industry. It was more about culture and ethics and attitude and diversity and empathy, which really is relevant to running any quality business. So, you know, it was great to go along the first year. It was brilliant to be able to be a sponsor last year. And again, you know, I think the trouble, a bit like having that first smash hit when you're an artist, it's hard to repeat that success. But they did really good. They did a really good event this year, you know, and next year looks like it's going to build on that success again. So it's really exciting to be involved. And it's great that men are welcome at an event like that. But let's make no mistakes. There are men who would learn a lot more from that room than others. And so I think it's important that we try and encourage as many men as possible within whatever the ratio of ticket sales is allowed, to come along and learn and educate and have a chat, because, you know, there is something for everyone to learn. And I think fundamentally, whether you're running a business or, as I posted yesterday, you know, understanding the opposite sex, you know, it just helps you generally be a better son, father, brother, husband, you know, whatever it is. It just helps you better understand the challenges that we don't generally face on a day-to-day basis. And that's whether you're talking about the language that's used, how you're treated at work, to how, you know, things your body go through are just kind of dismissed as if there's some sort of excuse to take a day off, to, you know, whatever.
And then the legacy of that on sort of estate agent content and panels. You've seen a lot of chat about that over the past week.
So
where are you on that?
Yeah, I mean, Toby Martin did a really interesting post today on LinkedIn, which has got a lot of engagement. And I'll leave it for people to jump on that and have a look for themselves. But there is a very well-known character who's commented on there saying, I've made mistakes, but kind of saying I'm not going to make it equal just to tick that box. And I'm using who I know. It's up to the industry to educate me who else should be on the panel. And I've kind of very openly gone back and said, well, actually, I totally disagree. I think actually we do have to stop and think and consciously make our panels more diverse. And that's not just by bringing women on. I mean, diversity generally in our industry in terms of webinar and panel representation is pretty bloody shocking. It is usually pale male stale is the usual go-to. And look, I think I don't think they'll mind me saying this. We had an interesting moment a year or so ago on the Supplier Lettings Advisory Board, where, because I think we originally formed it with like 6 or 7 of us, and then we quite quickly realised that actually it could do with being a bit bigger. We could do with increasing it to about 11 people. And I think at the time it was 6 men, 1 woman on the panel. And we kind of very quickly agreed, yes, absolutely, we need to expand it. I'd already said it'd be quite nice to have a couple of smaller agent representatives on the board rather than just having the corporates, which again was taken on board. But then we very quickly moved into, okay, so who do people think we should have on the panel? And lo and behold, man's name after man's name got dropped around the table. And, you know, it was a slightly scary moment in that I do feel like the child in that room. I'm kind of the minnow in that room. We've got representatives of the biggest corporate agencies in the country. You got representatives of Supplier, you know, and there's little old me with Depositary sat there and a single branch agency.
Hey, you're number 5th on the list now, mate. You're no longer little old Depositary.
But, you know, it was scary to say, but I did kind of stick my hand up and go, with the greatest of respect, I think there's enough dicks around the table. Which was taken the way it was meant. Everyone had a little bit of a joke about it, but everyone also agreed that we didn't need another man around the table. And then that very quickly changed the conversation to how we create a balanced board. And we have got a near 50-50 board. It's 11 people, so it can't be exactly.
Was that the only reason I didn't get the invite that was so obviously flying my way then?
Sure, let's go with that. Let's go with that being the only reason. I'm sure that was the only reason, Simon.
Good, that's fine. Well, look, I just think what you were saying there, it resonates with me a lot. You know, where I'd love to think that next year, obviously at the Women in Estate Agent Conferences, we've also developed so much that, you know, somebody like Chris Watkins could even turn up and find a place to be there. You know, it's.
I think it's just. I think for certain people. Look, I mean, you mentioned Chris, so. Chris he was engaged in the conversation, and you know, he's admitted his mistakes, and I love Chris. You know, I've got a lot of respect for Chris. There's a lot of great things he does. He's admitted his mistakes with getting the panel wrong, but I disagree with some of the defense he's used, which is, I mean, one thing that I think has probably been the most triggering, it was a sentence something along the lines of, "I'm not willing to compromise the quality of my panel." And I think that is the exact mindset we're trying to get away from. This belief that somehow by having a diverse or balanced panel, that is somehow compromising the quality of it. And also the fact that because there aren't 100 women shouting and screaming to want to be on the next panel, somehow means that they won't be a good addition to that panel, and somehow means they won't have a lot of value to bring. And I think when your job is putting panels like this together and curating this, I think therefore your job is to go out and educate yourself about the movers and shakers in the industry. And that doesn't just mean people who get headlines and put themselves out on social media. There are a lot of very effective people in our industry, male and female, who achieve a hell of a lot and don't tell anyone. They don't put it out on press articles and pie. They don't publish it on social media. They just do a really good job and run a bloody good business. But I think it's the responsibility of people in that kind of journalist panel debate area to go and find those people and start those introductions. I don't think it just has to be people, you know, like us three shy retiring types who, you know, blush and me. But you know, go out and find people doing interesting things and convince them that they need to be sharing their incredible knowledge and incredible talent and experience with a wider audience. And I think, you know, I think there is a duty to do that, and I think there is a responsibility to say, I'm sorry, this isn't good enough. And I think Toby raised a valid point today. I think it also extends to being on a panel. You know, one of the things he shouted out today is if you're asked to be on a panel and you agree, and then you discover that there's no women or one woman on a panel of 5 of you, actually, you should go back to the host and go, unless you address this, I'm sorry, I can't take part. Or even better, I think what's even better is go, do you know what, guys, I've looked at the panel and I actually think Megan would be a better person, or Anne Harrod, or Alex Tan, or, you know, there is an endless list. And I'm defaulting to the popular ones. I don't want to. There's lots of other incredible people, you know, Glenys Frew, everything she achieved with Hunters, Kim Lidbury at LRG, who's now in the run up to being a Property Mark president. You know, there's some incredible women in our industry. And yeah, it's not that fucking difficult, is it, to have a balanced, interesting.
I don't think it's hard, and I think we spend so much time hearing from all the regular usual faces. You've mentioned some of them today.
And look, a lot of us get repeats as well as guys.
Yeah.
You know, something I said to Chris, like in our Toby debate, you know, I said, I bet you there's more guys you've had on panels 10 plus times than there are women you've had on 3 or more times. So again, it's not just who, but it's who you keep going back to. And I know I get stuck on a lot of these webinars and things, largely because I could be put on last minute. I don't get stressed about prep, so if someone drops out, I'm a very willing replacement. But yeah, you know, I've probably been on far too many webinars myself where I've probably repeated or reiterated things that I've made perfectly eloquently elsewhere, and actually someone different would have brought something new. So yeah, you know, we all have our part to play.
We can do better. Wow.
I think it's very difficult, isn't it? Genuinely, my issue with the Chris point in particular, as it was, and again, first time you could call it an accident, second time's a trend. So as I've said to him, to his face, he's a misogynist, but of course he isn't. And there's very few people that have done more in this industry to highlight and to showcase the best that women have to offer. And when people were throwing rocks at him in glass houses, my issue was, if we really think that Chris is the issue here, who genuinely has no issue at all with this kind of approaches, we are.
And also, he doesn't duck away from it. Full credit to him. He doesn't. There are lots of people who would just disappear and not engage and be like, you know, and would also have a vendetta about it. Yeah. Fuck you. You're not coming on my sofa ever again. Yeah. I'm not engaging with you. You're never going to be on a panel. And he's not going to do that. We know Chris is not going to do that. And he's readily engaged. And it is a really important debate.
It is really important. Because I think
you have to be delicate about it. I mean, there were, you know, again, there were comments Chris has posted on that debate with Toby, and there is stuff I don't agree with, but I'm not going to him, you chauvinistic pig, stop talking shit. It's, no, I don't agree with you, you know, and like I said, that comment about...
but those people with a platform...
He won't intentionally make a panel balance just to make it balanced. And I'm like, yeah, but
that's...
should.
Yeah, that's what we need, because you need affirmative action. Until a day comes where we are 50-50 represented, we need to shift that balance, and nothing changes until we do. But people like Chris, and the reason he gets this stick is that he, and I suppose all of us on this call today, have got that similar responsibility, because we've got a platform, because you've got an audience. You have that journalistic responsibility, but you have a responsibility in general to people to make sure that we're representing everybody. And I think...
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, it ultimately comes down to who's in the room. You know, whoever's in the room when those decisions are made, ultimately it falls on their shoulders. But we all have to try and remind ourselves that when it's us in the room, I said, as scary as it might be, we need to put our hand up and say, I'm sorry, I'm not happy. This needs to change, or I don't agree with what you've said, or you know.
I do think that's just as important, rather than the people that are just organising it. And I think, look, the thing that comes back, which is definitely beholden, isn't it, is you can understand now where it gets, you know, the BBC and lots of these large organisations get accused for being woke, for having whole departments that make sure there is a balanced approach there.
God forbid we're woke, right?
Well, it woke Whaley. It works on every level. But I think the point about this is that, for knowing from his point of view, it is hard enough, you know, corralling cats, herding cats, to make these webinars happen with people cancelling and dropping off, to finally have this other measure. And I can understand this is where he thinks, oh God, I've got to think about that as well. And I think our point is, coming obviously as we do from one end of the spectrum, is that it still is really important to have that extra check in place, isn't it, at the right time. You might not be seeing colour, you might not be seeing gender, you might not be seeing sex and everything else there. But what you absolutely have to then make the point about is that that's going to be seen by other people in a different way. And it's just that, it's in the way that you have a checklist of everything else that you go for. It's just to make sure, isn't it?
And it will swing, right? There will be opportunities where a panel could be almost entirely women, you know, and God forbid. Imagine some of the comments on Pi on that.
Have you been offended by Whaley?
Have you been discriminated against? Are you missing your rightful place on the latest panel? No, I mean, we can see it now, right? But look, I think, like you said, until we have a duty to try.
Yeah,
right? We have to try. You can't always succeed. And I think again, pulling it back to the Zoopla board, there's a really interesting point to make, which was actually we tried to address two things. We tried to address having more women around the table, but we also wanted to improve the general diversity of the table, of the board, in terms of ethnicity. That was really difficult. That was really difficult, and it's something that we continue to look at and focus on. So I am not for 1 second saying it's easy, but I think we have a duty to make an effort. And I think, for all we know, Chris could put a panel together which is just men, but he might have invited 30 different women onto that panel first, who for whatever reason weren't available, didn't want to do it, or were originally on it and pulled out. I think, but that effort still needs to be there. So when you get that, oh, hold on a minute, there's only one woman on the panel, Chris can go, well, hold on, I legitimately invited 30 established female professionals who unfortunately couldn't make it. And this is where we ended up. But you should be able to give that defense that you've made the effort. We can't guarantee the result, but we have to be making that effort. We have to be creating the opportunity, right? We can't force people to take an opportunity, but it's our responsibility to make sure the opportunity is there.
Agreed. Let's loop it back to Depositary then, Christian, because one of the other things I was looking at as well before, in terms of obviously how much you've got on your plate, how much you've achieved, and everything else there. Getting the awards. For me, when I start really paying attention to, it's impossible to miss you guys, but where we start to do, as you know, we're running a lot of these net promoter score ratings now across the industry now. And you, I think, were our very first winner of that. In fact, net promoter score, as many people will know, that rates somebody from 0 to 10, and that gives you an overall score. And I did kind of say to you, I was a little bit worried about actually giving you that, that shout out early doors, because it was actually on quite small numbers, when it happened. And oh my God, what's going to happen when actually, inevitably you get more and more feedback and you might see that come off. I mean,
well, you even had that chat with us, because you even said this is such a good score. I'm not sure it's necessarily in your interest. I
was for the first time ever. Simon
he says that to everybody. He says that
was worried about over egging it. I mean, that's how bad it is. But here we are, I think it's 18 months later now, and your net promoter score is still at 80, based on now a really, really good number of it. I mean, there are no surefire bets, and sometimes you'll have difficulties onboarding certain clients and different clients, because that's just inevitable as you grow more. But what this shows to me is that on the whole, the Depositary is as close to a safe bet based on every metric we've got, whether that's the public reviews you get out there on the likes of Kerfuffle and on the other platforms, the Esters, but those net promoter scores as well, especially as they're at the point they give them, they're actually secret. So I'd like to think this is probably the best barometer for success you can get. That's got to mean a lot to you, hasn't it, in terms of making sure that benchmark, it doesn't waver too much?
Yeah, I think to maintain that score, like you said, 18 months ago, it was an incredible score, and there is that thing of, can we maintain it? But ultimately, I've always been a fan of transparency.
I'm sorry, Christian, just so we're clear, for those people who aren't there, most businesses across the wider world, if you just have a positive net promoter score, that's considered a good sign. We joked about it back then because Apple were in the 70s, Tesla at the time were in, sort of mid 70s there. So to have 80 is, I come back to it again, it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I mean, look, I've always felt one of our superpowers coming into this is that we are agents ourselves, and we didn't come up with a product that we wanted to sell to agents. We identified a problem in our agency business and then wanted to solve that problem. And then as we worked on the solution, we realized, hey, this isn't just for us. Every agent faces this problem, right? So I think from the get-go, we're genuinely solving a problem. I know that's something a lot of agents say. Some of the products they get presented in front of them, it looks like it's a product looking for a problem to solve. So I think we genuinely solve a problem. And then, I just tried to be as honest as I could in terms of when we deal with suppliers as an agent, what are the kind of things that that I personally didn't like. And this won't apply to everyone, but I mean, opaque pricing, particularly with tech, I really feel like you should be able now for any product, and it doesn't matter agency or whatever, you should be able to have a basic understanding of what the product's going to cost you. I've never been a fan of big onboarding fees. Again, I think in tech, you think of most of the tech you use on your phone. Imagine how many apps would get downloaded if you had to pay them 200 quid when you first downloaded them, before you paid your £5 monthly fee or whatever it is. So, I think we've addressed those things. And then, really what's underpinned how we've run our lettings agencies, we've always had this belief that if you deliver the best possible product, whatever that is, whether it's a platform or a service or whatever, if you focus on the product being the best it can be, then ultimately that resolves a lot of problems for you, because that's part of your sales pitch. When you put it in front of a person, they don't need to ask you 20 questions because the platform's told you those answers already. When it comes to questions about real life practicality in terms of how that is used, again, those answers are there. So we've kind of taken that same approach, and it takes longer to get there. It's definitely a slower process. But yeah, we build, better loyal clients along the way because they get solutions that genuinely work. And then as we have more and more clients, they're helping us mold and shape what that product is. And we were talking about it with TDS today. I was talking about it with some agents the other day. It's great when an agent comes to me with a big idea. Wouldn't it be amazing if when we did this, it could do X, Y, Z? But the stuff I actually really love is when we have someone who uses our platform on an almost daily basis, who emails us and goes, oh, by the way, when we do this thing, we have to do this, this, and this. It'd be really nice if when we did that, it automatically did those, or like it skipped that. Those like daily best user things, those are the things that actually are quite easy for us to tweak in the platform.
Oh, hey! And here we are.
Well, great to hear from Christian.
Here we are. There's a kerfuffle exclusive. He's rolled the car. Let's hope he's safe.
Well, now that he's gone, let's talk about him behind his back. You know what is remarkable? I'm happy to go on record with this. Whenever this started 4 or 5 years ago, when Christian sort of said, well, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I love Christian to bits, but at the beginning I thought, I can't see people paying for this. And actually, experience now shows that it's a really, really tedious part of a process that we often discounted because it was that dead zone where there's no money at the end of a tenancy, really, is there? For anyone?
I agree with all that. Do you know what I think's the most was when I realised that oh god, he's back.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's fine. We're just talking about it behind the back, so just remain quiet for a second. We were just talking about how this came around, and I seem to remember that you used to annually do a kind of review of the business, in this case, obviously, and look at what were the most frustrating elements of the business and what could be helped either by training or process or obviously outsourcing it. And if I do remember rightly, the Depositary came about because actually there wasn't anybody out there at the moment who was doing that. And so the question I suppose I'll put back to you now that you've stopped rolling the car is that do you still think that secret sauce that you've got comes from you obviously being at the coalface of agency? You mentioned a second ago there are lots of businesses out there that are creating problems for that don't actually even exist. Do you think that's still true of where you're where you make it work?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that I think most agency suppliers get asked quite early on, particularly with larger agents, is, oh, what's your ROI? Yeah. And that is something for us that financially is very hard to put a figure on unless people start sacking staff. Yeah, it's very difficult for us to say, well, you spend X with us, you will make what?
Tough for a lefty like you, isn't it? I mean, you can't go there.
But what we look at is job satisfaction. You know, if you've got good staff, you want them to be as happy as possible, so
Yeah.
they stay as long as possible and are as productive as possible. And I think, like you highlighted, the idea of Depositary came out of us doing our annual audit with our team, and a large part of that is us saying to our team, tell me what you hate about your job.
Yeah.
Tell me the task that when you have to do it, if it's a day doing it or whatever, that thing that makes you go, oh Christ, now I've got to do this. And unilaterally within the business, it was that end of tenancy process. And it wasn't just the job itself. Like, we also, for us, it was also this fascinating psyche with tenants. We have a really good relationship with our tenants, but despite that, we would enter the end of tenancy process and there would suddenly be this kind of switch, and they would start dealing with us like we were quite douchey. And it would be like, oh, hold on a minute, we've just spent 3 years and you've been telling us how lovely we are and how we're the best letting agent ever and you wish you didn't have to move, and we've just sent you an email about this and you're being really pissy with us, what's up? And they're like, yeah, because now it's the end, like you've stopped making money out of us, so now you're going to help the landlord rinse us out of our deposit.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, hold on a minute, we've not acted like that for 3 years. We've not rinsed you out of any money during 3 years. Why do you think that's going to happen now? And so it was really tackling those two things. It was tackling how our staff felt about fulfilling that job, and then also tackling that tenant perception of that user journey. And two of the most common bits of feedback we get are that property managers or whoever is the kind of coal-face user on our platform, their job satisfaction has leapt immensely because a load of low-value tasks have gone. They're not constantly having to do repeat work. They're not constantly having to explain and update things to people. And then also the end of tenancy journey, a lot of agents who are leveraging us well, what they're getting back is that actually the interactions with their landlords and especially their tenants are a lot better, because by our platform being there, it brings this kind of third-party entity into it. So although the agent is filling it out, the tenant understands that there is this kind of framework that they have to work to, and there's this process. So they know they're being treated like everyone before them and everyone that's going to come after them. So that's part of it. They want to just know that they're being treated the same as everyone else, but that also that they're being treated in a fair and considerate and professional manner. And those are the two most common feedbacks we get from kind of user insights from within the agents we work with. And, you know, great, that's what we want. We want staff happy.
I think that is that, you know, your phrase there about it, and lots of suppliers really struggle with this return on investment point. But you're almost flagging there, it's almost a return on enjoyment, isn't it? Because freeing that staff up to actually stop doing the horrible stuff and everything else there, it is fantastic. I think you're a bit harsh on yourself. I mean, you still keep that wonderful KPI, don't you? You're still at 10 days, is it? That you even across that many?
So I think nationally, I think we're averaging somewhere around 12, 13 days at the moment. But when you look, the national average without us is 21.
Yeah.
So amazing. You know, we're getting close to halving it. I think the last like full annual review we did, our agents were averaging around 14 days. So that's already a third quicker. But, you know, we've set ourselves two really big, like, our big goals, our big objectives that we want to achieve eventually with the platform is we want to get our agent community doing single digit deposit returns. So we want deposits reconciled in under 10 days.
Is that Anne's challenge then? Or you could almost say challenge Annika sort of approach. Is that
almost? So that's our big goal there, and we know that with the adoption of AI and plugging in a few other partners, we can help our agents get there within the next. I think definitely within the next 2 years we can get there. Hopefully sooner.
Well, look, we're gearing up now for conference season. Obviously, EA Masters. Obviously, you're going there. What's going to be your message to agents coming to see you there? Because I think one of the challenges we see a lot of businesses, unfortunately, although you're still the bright young thing on the scene here, you do get a lot of agents that get kind of almost they think they get used to what a supplier does. You know, companies who may have seen XYZ company 3, 4, 5 years ago, you know, and for whatever reason didn't go ahead with it, kind of rule it out because they thought they knew. How do you keep, you know, challenging agents to think that the depository is whilst it is new, it is still developing, you know, fresh stuff every week and indeed every month?
Yeah, I think that's the challenge every company has, right? And I think there's so many of us, there's so much content out there. It is very hard to get your message across. Yeah, I think look, all we can do is we you know, a lot of our messaging that we put out on our socials and the content that we create kind of underpins something that we believe in, whether it's sharing our dashboard about tenancy conclusions and average deposit times, or sharing other agents' feedback, because ultimately I don't really want to tell an agent what our platform does for them. I would much rather have 5 other agents tell them what they love about it in their business. I don't know, I think I would probably, the challenge we face the most is because we're not a revenue generating solution. Like I said, because there's not that stick on ROI, we often find that an agent that's going through a period of reinvention or whatever, we will often be quite far down on that list. Not because, sometimes it's because of just a process. They're looking at their lettings operation and they're starting at client acquisition, and we happen to be at the very end of that journey. That's the way it is. But for a lot of agents, they will look at that and they will say, oh, okay, we're looking at these 5 companies, but these 2 could potentially make us a lot of money, so they come in first and then we'll figure stuff out. I think
can I give you Whaley's nugget at this stage, Christian? Because I think it's quite timely, because what you've just highlighted there actually ties back to a couple of different things that we've said. And unsurprisingly, and I'm sure this is true on Google and anything else, the category that is most searched for on Kerfuffle is prospecting, around prospecting tools and everything else. Agents are looking, therefore, as you just said, that ROI in terms of, I want to pay a penny and I want to get 2 quid back. What's interesting is that actually in a lot of those different, you know, and it does tend to be the more marketing based tools, is that those are the ones that have the lowest average net promoter scores, which we were going back to before. What's fascinating is the ones that do, if you like, the essentials, you know, maybe less exciting, are the ones that actually become the absolutely tried and tested products that the people at the coalface absolutely live and breathe with. And I think that's quite interesting when principals are thinking about this. It's not, again, being deceived by the shiny stuff. Again, it's looking at actually what will help their staff out most in the business.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think, you know, when you're sat in front of a marketing platform, and God knows, you know, as an agent, I've seen enough of them over the years, and particularly recently, and there are some staggering claims being made by some of these platforms.
We wrote them.
Many which have very little substance. But I think I think, you know, that the big dollars, the flashy gold coins at the end of the rainbow, I think that, look, it's always going to be hard for a business owner to ignore that. But I think with a lot of the successful businesses we work with, they understand there's that balance. They've got that kind of eye on the commercial side of the business, and how do they grow their portfolio and open new branches and all that sort of stuff. But actually, how they think about that is a completely separate topic to their operational infrastructure and how they support their staff. And obviously, the larger the company gets, the more kind of fragmented those teams can be, focusing on their own stuff. But, you know, making sure that your staff are happy. I mean, like, who doesn't want a happy and engaged member of staff in their office? And ultimately, who doesn't want to be able to leverage your staff so that you can do as much as possible with as little as possible? I mean, you know, we look at Base now, and we've got, you know, lots of tech throughout our journey, And that is absolutely critical to the success that we've built, both in terms of the customer experience we deliver, but also in terms of the fact that, we've got a team of 6 people. Now, that includes me, but I would say I only spend about 10% of my time now on base. So I really consider myself a part-time member of staff at base. So really, we've got 5 full-time staff running base. And this year that will turn over about £750,000. So revenue per head is close to 150 grand. Now, I know most agencies would be very happy to have an average revenue of 150 per head, but you're only going to achieve that if you invest in your operational structure so that you can get the maximum. And there's your ROI. But not only are you making great ROI and having a really small team that you can reward well, you can pay well, you can give them decent bonuses, because there's half the number of Joe Blogs down the street who's doing it all the old way. But not only that, but you've got those staff coming in happy to be working with you because they know they get to use all this really well organized kit and solutions and operations, so they actually enjoy doing their job and they don't get bogged down in the mundane and the frustrating and the low value. So yeah, I think most agency owners understand that there is that obvious revenue stream, but building an effective, efficient business is definitely the other half to that.
Cool. Well, Christian, I think we've bounced around a little bit there as we tend to.
Finally, Christian, we like to ask all our guests, what do you recommend somebody who's looking to sort of grow a beard into sort of a very thick kind of bush-like thing? I mean, what do you put in that? It's not just tobacco, is it?
DNA.
Sorry?
DNA.
Oh.
On that beautiful note, that's all we've got time for.
Yeah.
Voice of the industry.
The short note is there's no shortcut for Whaley to grow a proper beard. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm just pleased you called it a beard.
Because you're on the call.
Christian, congratulations once again.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Look forward to it.
People at the Esters next Friday.
You'll see.
Am I seeing you lovely people at the Esters next Friday?
Well, you never know. You never know. We work so hard.
You won't be seeing me. I'm on annual leave, but I'm going to send Whaley.
Who signed off on that?
Shock. I'll definitely be there. So if any agents watching this want to chat, come and say hi.
Yeah, you'll know him. He tends to stand out. Okay.
You might find me. Guys, thanks so much.
Take care. See you soon.
Cheers, guys. Bye.